Hey there, and howdy, everybody. Welcome to Retro Repair Roundup, episode number 73. A very rare episode to have it right after another one, but we had scheduling weirdness, and so things happened. Thank you, everybody, for stopping by tonight and watching us talk to wonderful guest, Julia Minamata, about her video game, The Crimson Diamond, and perhaps other things. A couple little housekeeping cleanups, things to do before we get started. Again, remember, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave comments, chat, and stuff. That helps the YouTube algorithm say, hey, this podcast is really cool, because it is cool, and you know it. So do those things. So tonight is our wonderful guest, Julia Minamata, again, author of the game, The Crimson Diamond, in its beautiful EGA glory. Say
and
hi,
not only
Julia.
that, she's also a fellow Canadian.
Yes, even more important.
Yes.
So hello and welcome to our wonderful show. How you doing this evening, Julia?
I'm doing pretty well, but thank you so much for having me. This is good times. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to chatting tonight.
Joe, you left off something super important in that.
Oh, what did I leave off? I always forget something.
Which is always it's the sell, which is that Julia is an illustrator. She is a game designer, and most importantly, defender of the EGA video standard.
Yes. I'm sorry, Ron. I forgot.
And the most important thing, Canadian.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Got to keep throwing that in there.
Yes. Hey, fellow Canuck, Curtis Boyle is reporting in. Hi, Curtis.
Oh, that's good.
Yes. So, we're going to give you a wonderful moment in the spotlight, Julia, to introduce yourself a little bit before we dig in and start asking you wonderful questions about all the stuff you're working on.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
Introduce yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what Ron was saying, like Ron pretty much did the job for me, but I'll go back and I'll elaborate on some of the things Ron said. Yeah. I started out as a freelance illustrator. I did magazines and newspapers. That's where I went to school for editorial illustration specifically. And Trina, if you being fellow Canadian and fellow Ontarian, you might know like the Maclean's magazine. I used to do a lot of work for Maclean's on their back page. Did a few illustrations for the National Post, also something in Quebec called Maisonneuve, the Georgia Strait out west for Vancouver, things like that. But then I started to teach myself how to do pixel art when in like it's some kind of mid 2000s or so. I started to teach myself pixel art and started to teach myself Adventure Game Studio using YouTube tutorial videos. And then I just started to work away on hobby pixel art here and there in between illustration commissions. And then I started to think maybe this could be something I could actually make a little game of, because Adventure Game Studio, being purpose made for adventure games, it was really relatively easy for me to pick up. And when I was stuck, there was Adventure Game Studio forums that I could ask people questions. And so they were very super supportive and helpful in getting me to learn the things I needed to learn to make the game. And then I would say in about 2018, late 2018, I had sort of chapter 1, which was the demo as it is now, done. And I showed it publicly at Wordplay in Toronto, at the Toronto Reference Library. I don't think they have that event anymore, but they had it for a number of years. And it was a narrative showcase that you could bring your game to, which was really awesome. And from there, I just started to continue to develop it, continue to promote it and talk about it, during which I started to pick up other work. Like I did some contract work with Strange Scaffold. We released 3 games with Strange Scaffold. What's it called? Space Warlord Organ Trading Simulator, Witch Strandings, and Recommendation Dog on the Playdate. And during all that time, I'm still working on my own thing. And then last August, I finally, at long last, released The Crimson Diamond after many years of development. And it's been going pretty well since then.
Cool. Did any games that you like to play as a youth kind of tied into this?
Oh yeah, definitely. The big thing every year was, Christmas and birthdays, you'd get that big box computer game. It was the most important thing. One year it was King's Quest V. Another year it would have been things like the Dagger of Amon-Ra, the second lower bow game. But in between those big events, because big box games were pretty expensive, and they kind of, I guess they don't exist anymore really, but they were expensive then. In between those happy holiday times we would get to the bootlegs, the pirated copies of all kinds of games that my dad would bring home from the office, and included in that was stuff like Secret of Monkey Island, the King's Quest games, and yeah, I totally fell in love with that style of game because he brought home everything. My dad, he brought home all the DOS games that we could possibly ever want. But the ones that really stuck out to me and the ones like I enjoyed the most were those adventure games, and that's kind of where it started for me. Specifically, that Sierra style, I loved the Colonel's Bequest, of course. It was like the major inspiration behind the Crimson Diamond, not only in terms of how it looks and the text parser, but even the genre of having a mystery game. That idea of having a mystery was really super appealing to me too.
Nice. What inspired you to use Adventure Game Studio to develop the Crimson Diamond?
It was because it was exactly what I needed. I didn't, well, I mean, I don't want to say I had no programming experience. I maybe learned Java a little bit in like high school, and then there was something called Turing, which was like a teaching language in probably in high school as well, a little bit. But and from then until like way after college, there was nothing, and I kind of needed to teach myself what I needed to learn. What was so great about Adventure Game Studio is I think it's called an integrated design environment. So everything is kind of set up, the architecture of like rooms and characters and sprites, they're all set up as like little subfolders and subfolders. So that was a lot easier for me to learn, where there was already stuff like a save function and a load function, things I didn't have to like really program or figure out myself. I still don't know how any of that stuff works. So that was a super, super helpful tool to have for me. And just what also really helped me was in the early 2000s, YouTube was people are starting to show let's plays of games like Dave Gilbert's games, like the Wajidai games, Francisco Gonzalez's games, the Ben Jordan series. Yahtzee Croshaw did like 5 or 6 adventure games, the Chizo Mythos, and I got to like see these games being made by these people, and they're like, these are full-fledged adventure games, and only one person is making them, and that was super super inspirational to me too.
Nice.
Very cool. The Crimson Diamond, it's currently available on Windows and Mac, but I was just kind of curious. Is there any sort of is it possible that it's going to be available on additional platforms in the future, like specifically the Nokia Engage or maybe the Wonder Swan?
Or for those of us who don't use Windows or Mac, Linux.
Yeah. So Adventure Game Studio, it can compile to Linux. Although I do also know people who have taken the PC game and also played it with on Linux using wrappers or whatnot. So it actually does work pretty well without me having to really compile that separate version itself. Just hearing from other people's experiences. But in terms of other platforms, it's really tough to consider not only different platforms, but even translating into other languages. And that all of that has to come down to the text parser interface. This isn't going to play that well on a Switch. It's not going to play well on a PlayStation. You need a keyboard, and you need to have that text input, and localization as well. Like there's a lot of words in this game. There's 160,000 words in this game, so that would be very expensive to localize. So those are the kinds of the reasons where I'm not really looking at other platforms. Although you said the Nokia. What's funny is I actually think it actually would work not too badly on on mobile, like Android or iPhone. Specifically because ScumVM, we now have an iOS and Android app for that, and the game does, like, I have it on my phone right now, like it plays decently well that way. So people, if they buy the game on GOG or itch.io, they could actually probably load it up themselves that way. But to do an actual like thing where I actually have ScumVM or DOSBox as a wrapper, well, not DOSBox because it's not a DOS game, but like the ScumVM wrapper, and I have it like have an app in the App Store, that type of thing. I have been considering it, although like it takes a lot of these extra steps, and I don't have a Mac. I'm a PC user, like lifelong PC user, so it's kind of hard for me to figure that stuff out.
Hi, I have a 2012 iMac for sale for a really good rate. We'll talk after.
Oh my goodness.
So you kind of started with your career in with art and drawing, illustrations like that. And when you were younger, you played a lot of these video games, so you can kind of see where these two inspirations came together. It makes me wonder how these things kind of came full circle back around to combining together to inspire you to design video games.
Part of that was this idea that YouTube became a thing, and then I could see, not only could I see the developers working on, not working on the games, but people playing their games, but also the tutorial videos for Adventure Game Studio were on YouTube as well. But also another aspect of it that I do talk about it in other places in terms of like why I started making this game and why I started looking into pixel art. It's because like printed media has been on a decline for many years at this point. And even when I was graduating, it was in decline. It's really tough to make a living as an illustrator, specifically in what I was specializing in magazines and newspapers. And I had a lot of spare time. And in that spare time, I was like looking at this other stuff and like looking on the internet about revisiting, stuff like adventure games, like my happy childhood memories and my comfort zone of thinking back to what I enjoyed as a kid. And so, oh yeah, I see, like, there we go. It's all about that, right? It's all about like revisiting that. And so I think when I was not getting as much work in illustration as I wanted to, my thoughts were casting back to this happier time. And I think that was part of the reason why I started working on the project.
Cool. You're very much known for working on indie games. Was sticking with that genre a way to help
differentiate?
Thank you. I can't get my tongue around that word tonight.
It's okay. There's this book at the library that'll.
Oh, man.
It's another Trina word. I'm joking.
Listen. Anyway, yourself as a streamer, help differentiate. Wow, I cannot say that word. I have been on a stream since 11 o'clock this morning. So
you've had a long day.
My
Trina.
brain is mush at this point.
Oh, to differentiate myself as a streamer?
Yes.
Yes. Not so much to differentiate myself, but to find a community of people that are playing the kinds of games that I like to play and who'd be excited to play a game that was like those other games as well. And it kind of happened naturally for me because I was making this game that looked and played like an old school adventure game, and I wanted to play more of those myself. And there were tons of them I'd actually never played before. But now, thanks to the internet, like everything is at our fingertips. I started to play those old games and the ones I'd never played before, specifically the ones with the EGA palette. So this is kind of like my own research into what other developers were doing with that particular palette at different resolutions and how they solved those visual problems that would come up when you have such a limited palette and low resolution. But when I was doing that, I was starting to find other streamers on Twitch who were streaming retro, and the retro Twitch community is really incredible, full of so many wonderful people. And I just started to watch more and more streams. Like as I'm working, I almost always have Twitch on in the background, watching people play older games, and it was a way for me not only to experience playing that older stuff and kind of sharing those interests with the people that would come to my streams, but I would also get to re-experience like old adventure games and other types of old games, ones that I would never even dream of being able to run, let alone finish. I could get that experience about, okay, well, where is this streamer getting frustrated? And where am I getting frustrated? And just reminding myself of those design issues and thinking about when I'm making my game, I want to minimize those issues.
Cool.
Awesome. Now, speaking of designing your game, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about your game, The Crimson Diamond?
Yeah. It was basically me putting in everything I liked and was interested in into one place and giving myself an excuse to like learn more about those things. I mentioned earlier, like my dad was kind of the primary inspiration for just exposing me to computer games. Like he was always an early adopter with that stuff. We had a Commodore VIC-20, then we went into PC, and then we always had a computer in the house. We were my sister and I were some of the first kids on the block who would like do word processing for like writing our essays and stuff like that. And so from him, I really got that part of it. But from my mom, I got this love of mystery stories. And so she read a lot of those Agatha Christie mysteries. We watched Columbo together as a family. That influence for me was the other half of that. So for my dad was just having computers, and for my mom, the mystery stuff. And for my own interest, like I've always had an interest in rocks and minerals. And that was something where when I was thinking about writing a story in Canada, in the early 1900s, like what's going on in Canada in the early 1900s, I got this opportunity to like learn more about that stuff and actually like develop my interest in those things even further. Like I went to the Bancroft Jamboree, which actually my parents had taken me and my sister like ages ago to the Bancroft Jamboree, which is this incredibly amazing event that it's been happening for more than 50 years annually. They have speakers come in and vendors and all kinds of things. And a couple of years ago, I went back to it for the first time since being a grown up. because I was thinking about my game and like that type of a thing. I also went to Halifax last year, and I went to Wasson Bluff in Nova Scotia to look for zeolites, and like that gave me an idea for another game I want to do in the future. And so for me, it's really been exciting that I've gotten to enhance my hobbies and enhance my awareness of those hobbies and share my enthusiasm of learning about those things in the stuff that I put in the game.
Interesting that you said that. I actually grew up in Halifax. So
Oh,
when
oh
you're
my
like
gosh.
Nova Scotia, I'm like, I know where you're going.
Parsboro. I drove to Parsboro. I
Yeah.
rented a car, drove up to Parsboro.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've only been here for 10 years, but
Okay.
yeah.
It's a beautiful
Still-
place.
Still learning Toronto, because like every so often I'll ping out for a friend of mine. I'm like, how close is this to you? And he's like, you're closer. I'm like, oh, okay.
I'm not going to get up the Google Maps. Just tell me how many hours it
Yeah,
is.
right.
Julia, what was the toughest part about getting Crimson Diamond across the finish line? In the pre-show, we had kind of talked about like that, because I labored under the delusion that this was only like a 4-year development cycle. But you quickly shattered my my what I thought was true, and said that it was a much longer mission to kind of bring this. But what was like the toughest part of making it happen?
Well, when we come to the actual game itself, the programming was the toughest part for me because, as I mentioned, I had to teach myself that part of it, and so that's the part I'm definitely the weakest at. It, I always like to bring this up, but on social media there was this meme about Balatro and how Balatro is just a series of nested if-else statements, which is like one of the most basic ways to program something. That's basically what my game looks like as well, just in the programming. It's extremely like simply made, and because there's all I could figure out how to do, and I just have such a limited knowledge there. I barely was able to get it over the finish line that way, but I was fortunate because I had so many like really incredibly helpful people that were pitching in and helping me with scripting and all that stuff. So when it comes to the actual game itself, it's that. But when it comes to actually getting the game to put on sale commercially, like the Steam backend is like a nightmare. It's a legendarily like a nightmare. And for someone who isn't technical like myself, that was the thing where there was a day where I stopped and I was sitting down. I'm like, I can't. All this work I just cannot figure out how to put this game on the Steam store page. So it's over now. It's over. So I mean that only lasted for a day.
Right.
But it was a pretty low moment in terms of getting the game across the finish line. Just that aspect of it, just the technical aspect was always the hardest part for me. A lot of time people ask me because as I mentioned, like on and off, I was making the game for maybe 12 years. People ask me like, how did you manage to like keep working on it for such a long time? Did you get tired of it, and were you really like pushing yourself to finish it at the end? And to be honest with you, I like basically enjoyed making the game from beginning to end until maybe the last like 3 weeks when it got kind of hairy, like before launch. So 2 or 3 weeks before launch, then I'm feeling like, oh man, this is wow, I'm really like pushing myself to finish this thing. But up until then, the other, like 11 some odd years and whatever, I loved working on it. It was, for me, it felt like just like therapeutic, like it's something I can do that's completely within my control. Like I self-funded this, I self-published it. I was basically the only person working on it besides my incredible musician Dan Polakar, who did all the music for the game. It was just like for the most part me, and that felt so good because I was making this thing and every aspect of it I could express myself creatively in all these different ways. It was completely under my control. I had no one else to answer to, and just getting to continue to work on that for a number of years through all kinds of different changes, in my life. That part always felt really good to me.
Ron, did you want me to jump to
That makes sense. Yep.
Okay. How difficult was it to secure online distribution?
It's not too difficult. It's with Steam, you just have to pay your $90 US up front, and there's no more Steam Greenlight or anything like that. They just kind of, if you have $90 US and you can figure out their back end, like you can put up pretty much anything. GOG was a little bit tougher because they're kind of selective about sometimes what they put up there. So I had to like apply to get to sell on that storefront. Itch.io, anyone can put up anything, which is kind of the beauty about itch.io. Like you can find like the weirdest, most unique stuff on Itch. And that's incredible. And Fireflower Games is a European storefront, and they just came and asked me, and I like having like different storefronts available to people who, you know, maybe they're not the biggest fan of Steam, or maybe they don't like GOG for whatever reason.
Right.
I wanted to put it up in different places, and also regionally, like what was going to be better for you if you're in Europe. Maybe Fireflower Games would be better. So that part of it was not really that difficult. The more difficult part after the fact is when I have an update, I need to, you know, get the update to all the different storefronts. So that's the only thing that's a bit troublesome about
Right.
that. But compared to everything else to do with the game, like that stuff was relatively easy.
Cool.
Since the game was so heavily influenced by the Laura Bow series from Sierra, were you surprised by the community reaction?
In terms of people
Just
like
people that were just like, oh my gosh, like I absolutely remember this. This was such a foundational sort of, gaming experience for me. And it's very much we were talking in the pre-show.
Yeah.
This is very much a love letter to
Yeah.
those games. Were you concerned that people would not be as like sort of like they'd say, oh, it's a command line interface game, 20, it's in 2020x, EGA graphics, like were you concerned that people wouldn't get what you were laying down?
I was not particularly concerned with it, and for the main reason being is when I started the game, I was making it for myself, and I wanted to look how I remembered the games to look like. I wanted it to sound the way I remember those games sounding like. And with Dan, as I mentioned, Dan took it upon himself to actually go on eBay and buy a genuine Roland MT32 and compose the game's music on a Roland MT32. And oftentimes
Nice.
on Twitch, we were live composing the music on Twitch.
That's awesome.
Which I would never ask anyone to do that. But Dan is an incredibly huge nerd, and I'm very lucky to have him. And so the game sounds incredibly authentic. The game looks incredibly authentic, and that was important for me. But when people do see the game, like they get very excited, especially the people who recognize the style, because part of the reason people get excited is you don't really see that's the style anymore. I mean, we moved on from EGA to VGA to Super VGA, and people think, oh, that's advancement. Like that's better than what EGA was. And for me, that's never what that was. I mean, it's a style and a preference, and my preference remains with the EGA games. And the same goes for text parser games. Now, people say, oh, it's now an advancement from text parser. We now have a mouse and you can point and click. And for me, it was never an advancement. I mean, there's always something special about both of those things, both the text parser and the EGA, that I wanted to like bring back to people. And so when people see that it's this particular color palette, when people see the command line interface, they do get really excited because they literally have not seen a game come out like this in like the past 30 years. So that part was not as surprising to me. But when on the few occasions I've shown the game publicly at events, what has kind of surprised me is when younger kids come up to the computer and like they find it appealing. They want to, like, they get down and like they figure out the typing thing, and some, not all kids, but there's some kids that get super locked into figuring out how to play the game. Like they're really interested in this idea, and like they think the colors are just bright and fun. They don't think, oh, I remember this is 35 years ago. This is like a 9-year-old who is getting really excited about it. And that did surprise me. But when I thought about it, I realized like I was that kid back then. So it shouldn't surprise me that it can still have that appeal. But that got me excited because I realized that maybe I'm not just catering toward, myself and people like me. Maybe there is something to this style of game that is going to be able to appeal to other people.
So, with your game being one of the top 20 games in 2024 in Ars Technica, by the way, I'm curious. Exactly. We're curious if Roberta Williams or any of the other vintage gaming luminaries have reached out to you about the game.
Well, if you go to my Steam store page, you can see that Roberta Williams herself played a little bit of the demo and wrote a wonderful blurb. for the game. Last summer, there was an event called the Adventure Game Hotspot Fanfare, and I got to meet Roberta and Ken in person, and they signed the Colonel's Bequest big box, and they were lovely people. So that was incredible. So I have met a few. Douglas Herring as well, who is like one of my pixel art heroes, right up there with Mark Ferrari. Douglas Herring did the art for the Colonel's Bequest, and so I've met him a couple times at events out west, and it's incredible to talk to people like that, because you hear their stories about what it was like to make games like in the 80s and 90s, and it was completely different. There's a panel with Jane Jensen where they're talking about like having to fax back and forth like different notes and different ideas, and there's even this whole idea of, I'm so fortunate that at the stage of gaming history where I entered in, the tools are so much easier to use, and we have stuff like Steam and GOG and stuff like that, where you don't need, to make big boxes, you don't need warehousing, or you don't need to fight for shelf space anymore. Those tools back then, when they were developing those games, they were making those tools a lot of the time. Like that's what I hear from people like Douglas Herring and Mark Ferrari, this idea where they invented dithering to accommodate Mark Ferrari's desire for a more expanded palette beyond the 16 colors EGA could offer. They were making this up as they went along, and to develop a game at the same time as you're developing the tools, I can't even imagine what that's like. So when I get to meet people like that, I love hearing their stories. It's super inspirational.
Do you think that Crimson Tide will see a physical
Tide.
release, perhaps partnership with limited run games?
Oh yeah, it's Crimson Diamond. It's okay. It's okay.
Why? What did I say? Sorry,
You said Crimson Tide.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Big submarine movie fan, so
It's okay. It's okay. I would love that. People do ask me from time to time, and I'm still looking into it. I have worked with limited run games. I did this 30th anniversary Monkey Island anthology. I did some EGA portraits for that. But I am talking to a different company about it, so we'll see what happens. They're kind of going through like a bit of a transition right now. So there was a time when we were doing a lot of talking about it, then the talking kind of dropped off for a few months. But we're back to talking about it. So I'm thinking that it's looking more promising in 2025 that we might actually possibly get a big box release, but I can make no promises.
cool. Of Crimson Diamond.
Yes.
Just trying to cover my butt.
It's okay.
Outside of the Crimson Diamond, Trina, outside of the Crimson Diamond, what's been the most fulfilling project you've worked on?
Ooh. I might have to say, that's a super, no one's asked me that actually. That's a hard question. The one that comes to my mind first is Space Warlord Organ Trading Simulator. And the reason for that is it was the first time I'd worked on a team on any project. I had worked for many years as a freelance illustrator, which is another solo endeavor. And then I was, tinkering with the Crimson Diamond for years on my own. But when I got the opportunity to work with Oliver Nelson Jr., who's even at that time, like he'd put out like tons of games, and he's been all over the place, and he's this incredibly prolific, creative person. And for him to contact me and say, "Do you want to work on this thing with me?" It felt so legitimizing. Like I hadn't even released my game at that point, but it really felt like someone is seeing what I'm doing and they like it, and they like it enough to like bring me on to a team and work with other people. And that was an incredible experience because I had to learn so much about communicating with other people, having not really had that experience so much because I had worked so much on my own. But it offered so many more opportunities to not only collaborate but to work faster on stuff, because I didn't need to do everything. I could just focus on the thing that I can do best, which to this day I can still do best. Out of anything in my skill set is the pixel art, and it was low resolution, like green and black pixel art, which was an even more simplified version of what I was doing already. And that challenge of creating, these trader portraits, these organ portraits, in incredibly small resolution. Like the trader portraits were 50 by 50 pixels. And the organ inventory items were like 25 by 25 pixels. And you're trying to like really, I made a demogorgon head with 3 lobes and like teeth and wearing a suit within 50 by 50 pixels. That type of thing, that challenge was incredible. And the freedom he gives his teams is incredible as well. I think is that one of Zalavir's greatest strengths is he can put together these incredible teams that work so well together and have these incredible skill sets. And he lets them pretty much like do. I wouldn't say he lets them do whatever they want, but he gives them a lot of creative freedom. So I got an incredible amount of creative freedom to come up with what those traders would look like, the different space warlord organ trading simulator traders. So that was incredibly fulfilling for so many reasons.
Very cool. Pre-show, we were talking about the recent Noodle mini doc.
Yeah.
And that you were featured in that. But just to maybe ask you a little bit about that, since you have worked with them on other projects, but you were a contributor on the currently canceled passion project, Bass Reeves Can't Die. Has that experience shaped the way that you've approached other projects or now going to approach other game development efforts?
Yeah, that was. Oh, sorry. That was yeah. It's such a funny, odd thing to happen. I always like to say. I don't like to say this, but it's true. I'm so spoiled when it comes to the games industry. I've only really been in the games industry for maybe I would consider like the past 6 years or so when I'd announced the Crimson Diamond and started to like promote it on social media and to stream and everything. And I've only worked with incredible people. Like all the projects I've done with Strange Scaffold, and then through Strange Scaffold, I got to work on a Playdate game, and I got to be an art director for the first time on that Playdate game. And it's been incredible because it's always been with these independent creators who just they really facilitate the people they're working with. So for me, it was the first time with Bass Reeves. It was the first time a game didn't get launched. I had this idea that everything that gets started gets finished because my other 3 projects I'd worked on with Strange Scaffold, we'd started them, we finished them, they launched and they came out. And I thought that was just most of what happens. But as it turns out, there's a lot of these stories, like the noodle story, that is not unique and that's not rare. That happens all the time. This idea that you can be developing this project and for so many reasons that might be beyond your control, they don't happen. And I even say in that noodle video, I didn't even know that didn't happen until I got called in to do voice lines for this documentary that Noodle was putting together. I just assumed it was going to get launched at some point. Like I knew sometimes you have to delay releasing stuff for whatever reason. But my part, that travel hub, I had completed it. It was totally done. And I'm like, okay, well, that's my part of that project. I'm busy working on my other stuff, and that's going to come out eventually. And it was only, many, many months later when they were telling me, we're making this documentary about why Bass Reeves didn't. I was like, it didn't happen. So for me, that was super, super surprising. But what it has done for me is, it has really let me totally appreciate even deeper how lucky I have been to get to work on these teams where everyone is very excited and passionate about what they're doing. They care about what they're doing, and the projects are meaningful, and they happen. That's not the case 100% of the time.
So with all the upheaval in the game industry, what advice do you have for people weathering the storm?
Yeah, it's so tough. It's so tough whenever I see another, studio closed or another round of layoffs. It's so tough. I would say because I have never really worked at that scale, like I've never worked at a AA, AAA studio, I don't have any really good advice, but my advice would be probably advice that anyone can use, which is just create those connections with people, and don't think of it as I'm trying to get my next job. That's going to be your focus. But I mean, just in terms of what your life is, trying to find those connections with people that you really super get along with and make friends with people in your industry. And that type of a connection is hopefully going to help you, get that next job, or someone's going to say, oh, well, there's a job opportunity over there, this type of a thing. Like this idea of being a part of the games community and being active in that community and seeking those connections in a real genuine way and not in a, professionally, I need to network, which is, people hate the word network, but all it means is finding your people, and so much of what I've been trying to do as I've been developing my game for all this long. And the reason why I think I was able to sustain myself through making my game for as long as I did is because you do find your people. And not only practically is it good because there might be job opportunities, but it's also like moral support and knowledge sharing and all these super important things that are, you know, tangential to actually getting the job, but are super related to getting that job. So I guess my advice for people who are getting laid off now is, yeah, like revitalize those connections you already have with people you know, and seek out new connections with people you don't.
Cool.
And somewhat related to those who are getting new into the industry or thinking about developing their own video games, what advice would you give to young people or newbies coming to the industry about developing their own game?
Yeah. The first thing I think is that is super important is you have to share your work. And it might not be on social media, but social media is one of the places you can share your work. Like, get your work out there. And that's going to do a number of things for you. One of them is, you're going to find those people that you can connect with. They're just saying, oh, that thing that person's making is really cool. And then, you can then make those connections with those people. That reason is really important to share your work, but also getting feedback, not constructive criticism, which is incredibly helpful, but also people, saying, oh, that thing that you did is really cool. And that's going to motivate you. That's going to encourage you to continue what you're doing. It can be really hard and intimidating to share your work publicly if you're not really used to doing that. But I think one of the benefits I had from my arts education is we got very used to, showing our work in front of class and getting critique from, the professor, getting critique from our peers. That was a part of that education. So when I went into indie game development, I just carried over a lot of the practices I had from school and from my professional work as an illustrator into this other new industry where you're like, okay, well, I want, people to tell me what's wrong with this. I want to get better at this. And you're not going to be able to do that if you don't share what you're doing. So that would be my number one thing, is just get more comfortable with sharing your work. And even something where you think that you might not really necessarily like it, but just give it a try and see how you feel and see what the feedback could be. I always love to use Twitch as an example. It was never my idea to start streaming on Twitch. It was Dan, the musician's idea to start streaming on Twitch. We started streaming in March of 2020, when COVID hit. When everything was locked down, nobody was traveling. And Dan, besides being one of the biggest nerds I know, Dan also is a touring musician who tours with Sean Paul. He's been touring with Sean Paul for 13 or 14 years in the backing band, and he plays keyboards. And no one was traveling in 2020. And Dan said, we should stream. And I'm like, okay, we'll try streaming. We'll try that. And we ended up really enjoying it. And I still stream to this day, even though my game got released like last August. I'm still streaming. I'm still streaming art. I'm still streaming playing games. I was very surprised that I enjoy streaming as much as I do. So I would encourage anyone who is getting into sharing your work, like, see what works for you and try stuff that you think might not actually you might not actually be that interested in, because you could be surprised. And the last thing I'll say about sharing your work and getting your work out there is it also is important to be consistent. If you can be consistent, be consistent. I've been streaming on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, _Maple Mystery, by the way. I'm just going to put that plug in. I've been streaming consistently on Tuesdays, almost every Tuesday for the past 4 years. So people know on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, they know that I'm going to be there, and they can be there too. And that also really helps.
Nice. So I'm going to paraphrase Cher. If you could turn back time and give yourself advice on the development of a game, what would the advice be?
Oh yeah, this is another great piece of advice. This is advice that I would have loved to have followed at the time, and this is really good advice for people who are just starting out, making their own projects. Is start small. That's really important. Getting that experience of starting a game, working on a game, and then finishing the game is super valuable. I've only done it once in 12 years. I mean, if you could do it faster than that, I think it's going to be a lot better. The reason it happened to me this way, my excuse is I didn't know I was making a game when I started making the Crimson Diamond. I was just making pixel art rooms, and then it kind of gradually developed into more than that. But I would say start small. Start with like these little projects and see not only the arc of development, but also you can see, what am I good at? What am I not good at? What do I want to get better at? What do I like working on? What I don't like working on? And when you find out those things, then it's going to be easier for you to hopefully connect with people who like those other parts and might actually help with those other parts. And then you can, collaborate and then get something out faster and better than you could have done by yourself.
Cool.
Absolutely. Well, this is the point in the interview where I get to ask the goofball question. So no offense, but brace yourself. So
Okay.
Julia, why cormorants?
Yeah.
Seriously, I just washed my car.
Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry. You know what? It's funny because we don't get them like around like where we live necessarily. Like I have to go to the park, like one of the provincial parks, one of the Ontario parks, to see the cormorants. But I do see them like at Point Pelee. We have a park. Also Presqu'île is another park. These are great places to see migrating birds. By the way, I also like my parents have always been interested in bird watching, and that's why that's in there. Is because that's another aspect of
Nice.
stuff that we
Mhm.
enjoy. And so I take my mom to Presqu'île, I take my mom to Pelee, and we check out, the migrating warblers or the shorebirds. And, one of them is the cormorants, and they're these spectacular birds, and they're very distinctive. I also needed something that was, I'm a kind of a stickler, a little bit of a stickler for accuracy. So I wanted a bird that I knew that was going to be in that area, and also would, have be nesting in that at that time of year, and all these things like that.
Mhm.
That was part of that research too. Like I needed a bird that would fill that particular niche, like
Mhm.
literally fill that niche, and the cormorants happen to be that.
It's honestly it's kind of a joke, but at the same time, I really wanted to know because I was like, she's a birder or the family, because
Oh
this
yes,
is such a highly personal
yeah,
game. I mean,
yeah.
yes, you're the director and the lead star and the producer, and you did all the craft services, and I mean, you had every role in the
Mhm.
game, but it's like it's such a like a personal game,
Oh yeah.
that it's just like all these little experiences and things like that. It's neat that this is just another one of those things. So
Yeah, there's so much of that that's in the game. I mean, there is I don't so you finish the game, there is this cookie puzzle. It uses something called a thumbprint cookie.
mhm,
And my mom makes those cookies every year during the
yep,
holidays.
mhm,
And so this year's holiday card, which I send out to my $5 tier patrons, I put the recipe on the back of the card this
mhm.
year. The
Oh,
exact
nice.
recipe that she uses every year. So people can now
Cool.
recreate the exact thumbprint cookie.
Mhm,
And yeah, that's the reason that that's in there, is because this is something I've enjoyed for all these years.
yep,
She's made them literally every year as long as I can remember. Stuff like that. And what's great, as I mentioned, because I developed it by myself, I could do whatever I wanted. And that's a good thing, because you can stuff the game with all this weird stuff that you're interested in.
yeah.
It could also, be a bad thing as well. The other side of that coin is you could take forever working on something because you just want to keep putting stuff in there. You got to put, and there was a point where I'm like, okay, I really need to stop putting all this weird stuff in this, and I just need to like move forward and get myself to launch.
Listen, I'm gonna have to deal with all of the people emailing me asking what a double boiler is. So I've got there's a candle,
It's
there's a max or a wax melting puzzle. Never mind. It's
There's
okay.
a bunch of ways to do that, by the way. So
Hmm.
that is one way. And there's
Yeah.
a few other different ways. Yeah.
I watched a video where somebody was very much like that. You were just watching them learn what a double boiler was. Of like, I was like, oh, okay. Well, you got the water, and then I got the cup, and I put the thing in the cup, and it's like, oh, it melted. What? It's like,
Or you could
yeah,
just put the wax in the mug and put it over the candle. You don't even have to
yeah.
do double
I
boiler.
know.
Yeah, it's okay.
but it kind of reminds me of a friend of ours named Gupum, who does really great tech videos,
Mhm.
and he always includes little Easter eggs for those in the know, like those of us who know him, know where these Easter eggs are coming from in all
Oh
his
yeah.
videos.
Oh
Just
yeah, like
'cause-
even the blue mug that's in the game as an inventory item that you do use, that is like the logo slash mascot of Adventure Game Studio, is the blue cup. It's called the blue
Mhm.
cup.
Okay.
So a lot of Adventure Game Studio games are going to have like a blue cup or a blue mug in there somewhere, and I'm
Okay.
happy and proud that I included it in mine. I made it such a useful item too.
Mhm.
Nice.
That's awesome. So we've reached the part of the show where we have questions from the audience. Looks like we have about 6 or 7 of them queued up here. So I will go ahead and I will just do them in no particular order, but chronological order. Curtis Boyle asked, did you storyboard the entirety of your game ahead of time, or did you build chunks of it at a time and add more sections as you went along?
Yeah, I did the chunk thing. I realized, see, another benefit of when you work on teams with other people, it's like you learn all the stuff about how you're supposed to make a game, which I didn't know because I was kind of making it up as I went along. Design documents, like that's a great idea to make a game. Just like write it down, like what's going to happen, and and that came to me after working with Zalavir and Strange Scaffold, and so around I think chapter 5, I started to make design document. And I'm like, that's a great idea to do. So that was something where eventually I was planning stuff, but it was kind of really nebulous. And I would work on it I would work on chapter 1, and I do everything in chapter 1 up to completion. Then I'd move on to chapter 2, move on to chapter 3, and I know it tends not to happen that way. Like people tend to do like an alpha version where everything is kind of done from beginning to end, and then you put in the art and the assets later. But I have to say, I kind of like doing things like chunk by chunk, because it meant that I didn't get tired of one thing at once. Like I wasn't doing the same kind of thing the whole time. I think that if I saved all the assets till the end, I think I would have gotten kind of burnt out on doing the assets. That in that way. So it kind of was nice that I could just I developed one whole section, and then I moved on to the next whole section. Although it's probably not the most efficient way to do things. So yeah, in terms of like storyboarding and stuff, I got concerned near the kind of like maybe in chapter 5 or 6. I was getting concerned because there's a lot of subplots and plots in the game, and I wasn't really good about how to keep track of them. Like I didn't have a really good system for doing that, so I was getting concerned about getting stuff confused. And I think it all worked out in the end, but I do wish I had better tools for planning stuff out, because yeah, that's another lesson I'm taking forward into the next game, is being a lot better organized.
And some of the organization that you learn from working on a team, were you able to take some of that back to the previous chapters and to like refine things, or did you just like, that chapter's done, we're moving on?
Well, the thing is the chapter is done. If I try to touch it, it's going to collapse, because I said, the game is not well programmed. And so as something worked, I'm like, I'm just going to you just leave it. You don't want to even touch it like this, because you just think the whole thing will collapse in on itself. So no, I kind of didn't go back and make things better. I just went, okay, now I know this. And so now I'm going to take what I've learned about how to do things properly and carry that forward into the next chapters. Mm-hmm. Also, I think it was really important that I do that, because as the game progresses, it does get more complicated, because you have to keep in mind everything that happened previously, and then it just gets more and more complicated near the end, and the chapters would get longer and longer. And I felt I'm really fortunate that I did pick up those lessons to develop those last chapters, because it was getting kind of super complex.
So you're saying, don't make the farm boy and the princess the love interest in the first movie, and then make them brother and sister in the second movie. Got it. All right. George, you're taking notes, right? Okay, great.
And actually, technically, that was the 4th and 5th movie, not 1st and 2nd.
I'm going by movies as they came out contemporaneous to me being alive.
Yeah. That's the way to do it. Yeah, here's the thing about what's really great about not having voice acting in your game. First of all, voice acting.
It's terrible for me because I'm a voice actor, but
I'm so sorry, but I'm going to tell you why it's so good not to have it in your game. No, from a design perspective, why it's not. It can be expensive and time consuming to implement, but also when I don't have voice acting in my game, I have the agility to change stuff in the writing, right? Because if I have my voice acting and I record all those lines, and then all of a sudden I need to change a bunch of stuff, I don't have that same flexibility if I have to re-record all these lines and stuff. You feel kind of more locked in, Sure. They actually call it your lock, right? You're locking your lines and stuff. And for me, even, a week or two after launch, if someone pointed out a narrative inconsistency, I can patch that. I can still patch those things, and no one is going to really be the wiser. And I love that idea, because there are times when someone will point out, hey, someone said this in chapter 3, and in chapter 6 they said this. I'm like, oh, you're so right, I need to change that. I can do that because I'm just doing all the writing.
Mm-hmm. I'll take the question. I'll
go ahead. No, you got it. Take it.
Okay. Do you want to put it up on screen though? I can't click on it and do that part. Yeah. So Curtis Bowles asking, any thoughts of backporting the game to the actual AGI so that it can run on retro computers that were capable of playing old CR games like King Quest and so forth?
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons why I'm not really going to be looking into that. One of them is, as I mentioned, technically I'm not the strongest on this stuff. And so I did an extremely sloppy job of programming. I'm sure. Oh, you know what? Actually, I realized someone did a calculation on how many floppy disks this game would take. I think they said 49 floppy disks this thing would take. But yeah, in terms of the programming, like it's just so inefficiently done that I don't think that it would actually run on, like if we tried to backport it, it'd be like way more trouble than it's worth. And another aspect of it is because I did do everything on my own. Like my time is incredibly limited, and so I have to really choose my battles about what I'm going to do. And I'd rather like spend my time working on a new project than go back and try to like make the game work on something that's old, that's the older hardware.
Cool.
Eric's Edge is asking, what do you think about earlier environments like text adventure games and choose your own adventure books? Like, hate, influence, ignored?
Love them. I love every form of interactive fiction. I love text parser and just with no graphics adventure games so much. I would love to like dabble in that myself, to be honest with you. I love I love all the story focused games, you know, like this idea where you can have like Zork or Deadline or any of these games that can do these incredible mechanics that are like surprisingly complex when they only have the words to go on. And when you have that, you know that the person is super concentrating on what the story is going to be and what the characters are going to be like, because there's not this other stuff like the the animation and the artwork to fall back on. You really have to be very careful about what words you're choosing. I love to choose your own adventure books. I actually have there was Nick, not only the classics, but there's a series called The Magic Road, which were like picture books for kids, like for even younger kids, that had color coded corners on their pages. That I had 3 of them, and I actually went back and I think there's only 4 of them. There's like a Sleeping Beauty one, a Little Red Riding Hood one, Goldilocks and the Three Bears, and one more. And I love that idea of having narrative be like the system in the story that's like the most prominent. So anytime anyone has any game that is in any some form of interactive fiction or narrative focused game, like my ears perk up right away. It's my absolute favorite thing in the world.
I'll take Curtis's next question.
Go ahead.
All right, so Curtis is asking, how long did it take you to make the game?
Mm-hmm.
And that includes everything from learning everything you need to learn to produce it, design it, art, blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
Programming.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned like before we started going live about how this is such a hard question to answer because for a lot of the development, I was, it was a hobby. It started as like a very infrequent hobby that I would pick up. I would, play around with it. I put it down. I pick it up again when I was less busy again. And so that's how the game happened over a period of probably 12 years. Like you could go back to my illustration blog. I have an illustration blog that's still up. And if you look for like that type of art, you can find the Crimson Diamond art as early back as like what 2013, 2011, even earlier. And that was when I was just, looking at screenshots of Sierra games and like trying to see if I could emulate that style. And then gradually, I'd work on Adventure Game Studio. I'd get stuck in Adventure Game Studio. It's and a lot of times in the development of the game from 2018 to 2024, I was working part-time on those other contracts and then working on my own game during that time. So it took a long. I can say that the next one, and I do have a sequel planned. The next one will take a lot less time, and I know all the game developers say that, and they often take even longer or just as long on the next one. But I really do strongly feel like I can do this because not only did I learn all these lessons, but I don't. There's so much that is now that I've figured out how to do, like the UI and the menus and everything. That I'm just gonna like rip from one project and stick it on another.
Yeah.
That stuff took ages to make. So yeah, it's a hard question to answer. I can't even really answer it because I really don't know. But yeah, from many years to sequel, I would love to get a sequel out in like 3 years. That would be awesome.
Can I offer you just the tiniest little bit of like suggestion?
Yes, please.
Okay, if you ever played the Alone in the Dark series, Infograms or Grames, depending on if you can pronounce words or not, what they would do is they would release little miniature little snapshot things. So you've got like the Christmas little adventure that they came out with. It was like a 20-minute little thing. And yeah, I would think that with everything you've already got in place, people would gladly pay for just like, oh, here's a mini adventure of just something interesting that happened to our heroine. And, just It could just be, and it could be as simple as it's like a bottle episode where it's just like I'm doing things here at the college, and it's a mini adventure. I got trapped inside at Christmas, and I've got to solve a little thing so I can get out. So that is free. I claim no ownership of this idea. I just something like that would be seemingly like a very short turnaround on something that would be keeping people engaged and interested in the property, but wouldn't maybe hopefully be too stressful to produce.
It's funny that you
say
mentioned
that as somebody who doesn't have to do any of the work. Thank you.
No, it's funny that you mentioned that, because that's exactly what I was planning on doing for the next thing that I'm doing. So
That's great.
you totally like figured it out already.
I'll make sure to send you how to exactly spell my name in the special thanks section down at the very, very bottom. Also had the same idea at a much later date. Ron McAdams. Thank you.
That's literally what I'm going to be doing like this year. I actually I'm working on something right now. I can't talk about it beyond the fact that I'm working on something right now. I collaborated on a much shorter game, and I did the art and animation, and I designed some fonts for it. And I didn't do the programming because it's not my strong suit. The other person's strong suit is programming. But that's something that's going to hopefully come out later this year. It's a much smaller little project. But aside from that one, I am planning on making a mini Maple Mystery that would take everything I've learned. I want to create a template where I can fix my scripting and fix all the stuff that I learned to make a tiny little game that maybe would take an hour or two to make, an hour or two to play. And from there, build on that stable foundation, not like the foundation I have right now, the stable foundation of that small little game, and make a sequel in the following year. So that's the idea. And I even have the idea for what the little mini Maple Mystery would be. And it has to do with Wasson Bluff. It has to do with Parsboro. It has to do with going to the Bay of Fundy and finding, like rocks and stuff like that. And I would like to make it in the AGI Sierra Engine style. So like that gold, so I think I saw someone mention Gold Rush.
Mm-hmm.
I love that Gold Rush style. I would love to explore maybe making some artwork in that style and just making a little cute little Wasson Bluff AGI style adventure game that I can then use to build my big sequel that I'm planning.
That's nice.
Cool. 1-Bit Fever Dreams, which you can probably guess from his name, loves limited palettes. All 2 colors in his favorite. He's asking about the EGA palette, if it's more about a constraint being the catalyst for creativity, or it's more about simplicity of coloring to get the art out in a timely manner, or some mix of both, or he's curious about that.
Yeah, for me, it's actually the reason I chose that palette was because of like the incredible nostalgia I have for the palette. So I think that's where it starts from. When I was an illustrator, I did some silkscreen printing. I used to do a lot of silkscreen printing for illustration, and that would be like maybe 6 color process. If I 4 to 6 or maybe 8 color process. With EGA, I had like way more options now all of a sudden. Yeah, exactly that. So that stuff would be like, that was even, when you look at it, it's like, it's bright, limited color palette.
Mm-hmm.
And with EGA, it's really bright, it's limited color. So I feel like it was a really natural transition for me to go from my illustrative work to pixel art. And it also is a good catalyst for creativity, because I'm all about that limitation being, what is going to help inspire me to be more creative in my solutions that I find. I don't like having infinite options or infinite colors to pick from. You give me like 16 colors, even with Space World Organ Trading Simulator, where you only have like the black and the green. I get super excited about that. This idea where, can you pull off making, a translucent gelatinous cube gangster in the 50 by 50 pixels? Can you make like a humanoid ice cream cone? And that gets me excited, where I want to solve that problem in as efficiently as possible. And with EGA, yeah, you kind of are saying, well, these are the colors I have. So come what may, I need to solve the problem at hand with the 16 tools I have at my disposal. And that is super exciting for me, for sure.
Cool. And Eric's Edge is just asking about setting deadlines. How often do you blow through them? And what do you do to avoid that?
Yes. I think the trick is the trick to not blowing deadlines is don't give yourself deadlines. That means you can never blow them. That didn't really work for when I was a freelance illustrator, because when you're working for magazines and newspapers, they have to go to press, and they're going to go to press whether they have your piece or not. So that got me good at making other people's deadlines, and I've always been really good about making other people's deadlines. For myself, part of the reason probably this game took so long is I didn't really make deadlines for myself. And the reason I think the demo happened, the first chapter demo, playable demo happened at all, was because I submitted my game to Wordplay in 2018. And when I got accepted, which I was not expecting, I suddenly had a deadline for, you need to make this presentable to the public in 3 weeks or something, because now now you're going to go show this thing to people. And that really started to focus me on, okay, here's a goal I have all of a sudden. And after that, I never really gave myself deadlines from chapter 1 all the way through to all the rest of the 7 chapters until I had announced my launch date. And by that time, the game was pretty much finished anyway. But yeah, I'm kind of, I don't know how I feel philosophically about self-imposed deadlines. I can see the value in them, but also I see that also as putting pressure on myself that maybe I would not have appreciated. Because when I was just tinkering with it as a fun thing, that gave me the opportunity to fill the game with all this extra stuff that would not have made it if I was just had a deadline. And if I had some producer who was saying, no, Julia, you can't let Nancy spin in the chair in the study. There's no reason for that. It doesn't do anything, or, there's a whole, why do you have that bathroom in the game? There's literally no gameplay reason for the powder room in the lodge. I said, well, my only rationale is you need a bathroom on the ground floor. You just do. You should have one. It doesn't do anything, but it needs to be there. And now we need to make, her be able to wash her hands in that bathroom, and she needs to have her face reflected in that mirror, and all that stuff that comes along with the decision of, it makes sense to me as a person that there's a bathroom in the ground floor.
Mm-hmm.
But a producer might look at that and say, that's not adequate rationale for all this time you're going to put into making this room. So don't even have that room.
There has to be a Laura Bow joke or a Laura Bow reference where you take the shower and don't lock the door. You have to have that. That is, people would have been like, if it hadn't been there.
And I can see another, like, this producer devil on my shoulder saying it's going to confuse people because they'll be like, oh, who did that? And that's not really connected to the rest of the story. So that, so there's a lot of like examples that I find where not having a deadline really benefited me, but at the same time, yeah, if you need to get something out, eventually you probably should set a few near the end.
And last but not least, where can the good folks that are watching tonight find you online?
Well, hold on just a second, because we just had a last-minute question come in from Curtis.
Okay, sorry.
And I would like to have the opportunity to ask that question, if that's okay.
Okay, ignore my question.
I retract the question.
Yes. Curtis Boyle, last question, asks, do you have any desire to do other genres of video games other than adventure mystery games, or perhaps maybe something with a programmer so you can focus on the art maybe and story?
Yeah, that's also a very good
deadlines.
question.
Wait, we just answered that question. Yes.
That's a very good question. I feel a little weird about just loving, the thing is, I can say this now because I've only made one, but I feel weird about only really loving the idea of making adventure games and story games and specifically mystery games. I don't know. There's something about that. I mean, like I said, maybe after the sequel, I will change my tune, but it's the stuff I get most excited about in terms of what I feel like I can do with the genre. I don't really know if I have it in me to be excited to make a different genre, but I won't say never. I just know that for what I enjoy playing and what I've so far to this point enjoyed making, I really feel like adventure games are for me. Although maybe not mystery, who knows? But yeah, I don't know. There's something about this niche where I'm like, it just feels so comfy cozy in the niche that I just want to stay here and see what I can do with this particular style of game, because it is my favorite.
Fair enough.
Cool.
All right, am I allowed to ask now?
Now you're allowed to ask your question, Trina.
All right. So where can the fine folks that are watching the stream find you online?
Yeah, there is juliaminamata.com, and from there you can find a link to that. Yeah, it's exactly that site. So there's a link to my old illustration stuff on the right. You can find all my social media stuff. You can find the Crimson Diamond website. You can find links to those other projects that I've worked on. So that's probably a really good place to find me. I also do a monthly Crimson Gazette that you can sign up to on my website. You can subscribe to that. So if you don't want to do any social media stuff, you can get yourself a monthly edition of the newsletter directly to your email box. So that's, I don't know what I probably have to scroll down a bit. It's even hard to find. I mean, oh yeah, there it is. It's like that single white like line that's above the trailer. So that's where you can subscribe to the newsletter that I have. I'm also on all the social media under my own name, Julia Minamata. I also stream on Twitch at _mystery at 8 p.m. Eastern on Tuesdays. So I'll be doing that on Tuesday this week. And yeah, that's pretty much how you can find me. The Crimson Diamond is available on Steam, on GOG, on itch.io, and Fireflower Games.
Cool.
Awesome sauce. Well, Julia, it has been an absolute blast having you on the show this evening. Again, thank you very much for taking some time out of your evening to hang out with us other super nerds on the internet. And this is the part of the show where we talk about our own little worlds and what's going on in our worlds. And you are absolutely welcome to stay. But if you do have places and things that you need to go to, you are also welcome to bow out and say good evening. So it's however you want to do that.
I can hang around, sure.
Great.
Cool.
This segment normally doesn't last more than 16, 17 hours, so it'll be no problem.
Minutes run. Minutes.
I got my astronaut diaper on. I'm all set.
So let's talk about gets. What is some of the cool stuff we've gotten recently? Ron, you get to go first randomly because I chose it.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna do all the kajiggering there, but hi everybody, it's Ron from Ron's Computer Videos. Actually, this has been a really cool week. I've gotten all kinds of neat things in. I don't necessarily have them all with me at the moment, but something, because I don't have the other thing that's kind of really super cool teed up. So maybe come back to me at the very end. But I did want to show something that came in that was really neat for the Apple II. It is called the X Drive. It is produced by MacFX. This is a cool card. If you remember the Booty, BOTTI, which was a card that was came out a couple of years ago. It's basically a mass storage device for the Apple II. This card right here, actually, our friend Javier, who isn't here this evening, did a really neat introductory video all about this. This can do basically anything that's like a block mode disk image. So it'll do smart port. It will do a lot of it. I guess as long as it's a block mode thing, it'll do floppy disk images as long as they're ProDOS and block mode, yada yada yada. And it's just really neat. It supports long file names, all kinds of stuff. I'm going to do a video about it hopefully this week. The nice thing about this is it supports SD cards. And also sort of like the Booty supports flash drives. And they made some really nice MacFX flash drives. So yeah, this will be fun. And it's a great way to add storage to your 2, your 2 Plus, your 2E, your 2GS, your Franklin Ace, whatever machine. If it's got a slot like an Apple II expansion slot, pretty much it'll work with that. So anyway,
does it work with the 2C?
2Cs don't have a slot. So if you had some super obscure thing that plugs into the processor that gives you a slot, then yes, it would. But if you had that, your yacht that parks inside your other yacht arrived, and you don't have time to worry about this. So,
Rena, recent gets, cool stuff. I'm gonna let you go next because I really don't have much, so I'm gonna let you go.
My recent gets, you can't really see. But I'm going to do this. Let's turn the camera around.
Oh no! Earthquake!
Hey, look, there we are in Infinity. But I now have 2 monitors.
Oh, that's
So,
neat.
I now have a monitor stand, which you can't really. There it is, way back there. It's a dual monitor stand, which allows me to have dual monitors. Which, by the way, I'm going to come back on camera. If you're not subscribed to Veronica Explains, just Patreon,
Mhm.
focus. Oh, I'll be out of focus. for
You,
this.
broke it.
you, yeah. Also, tell
You
us
turned
about
it into
that little container of Vaseline you got for your webcam.
Right? Yeah. Come on, man.
Nah, it's all right.
Anyway,
I know what you
I
look
don't know.
like.
It will Yeah, everybody knows what I look like.
There you go.
If you're not subscribed to Veronica Explains Patreon, go do that. You get access to this wonderful Discord channel with wonderful people. And it's one of these wonderful people that sent me this dual monitor arm. And I thank them from the bottom of my heart because it was a complete surprise. So
That's really great.
thank you.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, you can only be on her Discord if you're a Patreon person. So
Mhm.
go do the Patreon goody things and
Do it.
give her
Joe
money.
says so.
And then also go to my coffee account and give me money while you're at it. Because hey,
Welcome to Retro Repair Roundup, where every 35 seconds Trina asks for money.
damn right.
It's okay. It's
I'm no
expensive to
worse
be
than this
alive these
person.
days.
I'm no worse than the person over there.
Hey, be quiet.
JCM-1.com.
Quiet, you. Quiet, you. Yeah. Anyway,
Joe, what
is
do you
that
got?
it? Yeah.
That's it. Yeah,
Hi,
that's all.
everybody. I'm trying to click the button and somebody's clicking the button for me. Stop clicking the button, Ron.
I just
Why are you clicking the button?
because I'm also the director and craft
Oh, that's
services
right.
is ready.
Oh,
That's
just
right. Thank you.
Just
So-
one final thing. You're
Oh.
welcome, Veronica.
Yeah.
Veronica said thank you to me. I'm just
Yeah.
saying.
Oh, thank you, Trina.
Yeah.
Veronica is awesome.
Yep, she did.
Hi, Veronica. Anyway, hi, everybody. So I don't really have a lot to show other than reiterating the fact that I have 475,000 pounds of old, you can see them down here, of like old chips just in boxes. Yeah. So one of my clients, for those who don't know, I do IT services during the day. And one of my clients is an electronics manufacturer, and they're like, we have all of these old chips from 1975 until yesterday that we're not going to be using, aren't stocked, and they need to go away because we need this cubicle space for a new hire. And I'm like, give me chips. And I went through all those chips, and I'm working on trying to get them sorted amongst all the other lack of time that I have. But that's kind of that's my biggest get. The other big get is coming tomorrow. Sometime at some point, I have invested in a new 3D printer, the Creality K2 3D printer, which will allow me to restart production of the large scale cases by Gut Bomb and potentially others in the future, like this wonderful thing that takes a special 3D printer to print because it's so big.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the previous 3D printer I had was just being silly and not doing the thing correctly. So that arrives tomorrow. So that's it. That's all I got in my gets.
Great.
Now, our guest Julia gets the opportunity,
Ooh.
if she likes,
Yes.
to talk about some really cool, neat things she wants to talk about.
And
Yes,
it doesn't even
indeed.
it doesn't have to be a computer thing. It can just be like, oh my gosh, I was at
It's like, here,
I was
look at
at
this
the-
wonderful plush.
I was at the
got.
stationery store the other day and I bought
No,
this
I can totally do
beautiful
this.
pin.
Okay, hold on. I'm gonna grab a couple things. I'll be right back.
Okay.
Let me do this. Okay.
All right.
Trina, sing our intro song.
Actually, it was funny
Dun,
because
dun,
when we were playing the intro song, Ian Scott said, "Ooh, I love this intro song," and I still
Yeah.
have it on my StreamYard.
Ooh.
And I'm
Oh, yeah.
thinking the next time I'm going to stream, I'm just going to play the intro
Just
because
gonna play
apparently
that
maybe I
song.
get maybe
as
I
well.
get Ian Scott to come watch one of my streams.
That song was written and composed
Oh.
by yours truly. Anyway,
Oh, fixed camera. That's horrific. What's happening to my face? Okay.
apparently it's Ash Wednesday.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
nice.
Okay. Okay, I got some stuff. Okay. All right. Cool. Okay. I've got a few big boxes to share. So I meant. Oh, come on now. Okay, good. I mentioned that I went to the Adventure Game Hotspot Fan Fair, and I got to meet Ken and Roberta Williams.
Yeah.
And I got them to sign
Nice.
Roberta
Mhm.
Williams, Ken.
Very
I can't
cool.
think down here, and then also Douglas Herring, who did the artwork. Also Ken Allen, who did the music, is over here,
Mhm.
and also Robert. Who did the systems? I can't remember his last name. Robert H. He's in the Moby thing. He's in the Moby stuff. But anyway, there's my copy of Colonel's Bequest that's
That's
signed.
awesome.
You might want to get your money back. There seems to be a hole in it on the painting in the background.
Oh,
other
there's
one I have-
chroma juice all over this thing.
This is. I know. I'm so sorry.
No, it's
It's
all
like
right.
so.
It's
You know.
fine.
Okay, there it goes. Okay.
Mhm.
So here's my. This is one of those Christmas big boxes I got. So this is the
Yeah.
one I had grown up with. Cosmic Glory 2, Trial by Fire. We've got Corey Cole and Lori Cole along the side here. I met
Mhm.
them at a different event, and Douglas Herring, who also did some art and animation for that.
That's
And
awesome.
there.
Nice.
So those are my two gets I wanted to share.
That's awesome.
Cool.
Very nice.
I'm jealous.
Mhm.
Where do you live so I can steal them? No, I'm kidding.
Oh no. 123 Fake Street, Canada. Anytown, Canada.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
All right. Let me show my one thing because they won't forgive me if I don't show this. So hold on 1 second. Sorry. I'm gonna attempt to shift over to my other monitor and hopefully yes, there we go. Hey, I did it.
Oh.
Okay. So a
Oh yeah. I
long
remember
term
this.
or a long time supporter and friend of mine made me this beautiful. Let me see if I can make it bigger. There we go. This beautiful latch hook pillow. So it is I cannot even imagine how much time and trouble went into making this. But it's huge and I've got it in my office at work. I've had people asking me about it and they're like, Ron, explain the pillow. And I'm like, it was like it's like my logo and a friend of mine like made this beautiful thing and I'm like I don't even know how many hours and they're like wow that is really cool. So I wanted to say thank you again. um it means a lot and again I am speechless over this thing.
All I'm going to
It's
ask, Ron, though,
adorable.
is couldn't you have washed your mouth before they did the latch stitch? Because it looks like you've been eating SpaghettiOs, and it's
It's
all
like-
over your lips.
Well,
Ron-
if when you meet me in person, I don't know if it comes across on camera, but my facial hair is okay. I don't know what happened, but my hair looks darker than it really is. My hair is like super gray, and like my mom had white hair, and so but it goes down to like here, and then everything else down looks like a 20-year-old Irish guy. So it's red. And I'm just was trying to use colors that were inside the Apple logo and all that. So
Yeah,
it's
no,
fine.
I realize.
It's for
I
fun.
just was like, that's the only thing I could think of when I was looking around your mouth was, why were you eating spaghetti?
Also,
Like,
Cheetos are
so-
delicious.
I was gonna say, Ron, like I know that you have the Cheeto addiction. I didn't want to out you.
No, it's okay. It's
So-
all right. I'm getting help. I went and
Okay.
saw I went and saw Dr. Dr. Now. What's the guy from My 600-Pound Life? Where he's like, you've eaten all the calories for the next 4 years. I'm like, it was one bag of Cheetos, Dr. Now. So anyway.
Cool. Next, we go to what you working on, what projects are happening in everybody's worlds. And I have a couple fairly big things that I'd like to remind folks that I'm working on, and also to remind a couple of backers who are like, Joe, why isn't it done yet?
Joe,
that I'm
why
working
isn't it
on.
done yet?
Because I'm on this wonderful live stream with my friends and awesome guests. No, seriously. So this is very close to being done in production. I have two small things to get finished on this. This is the Diamond Trackstar Plus. This is the card you can put in your old IBM PC and turn it into an Apple II. So yes, that's going to be done very, very soon. I figured out two very timing critical things about these two chips right here that allow me to make some daughter boards and get this finalized and finished. And there's also one thing about the Diamond Trackstar that I need to correct as well, is that there is an issue with multi-voice sound with certain games on the Diamond Trackstar. And I have an idea of what might be the cause, but I have to actually dig into it. Hopefully we will get that done soon, and then people can, turn their old IBM 5150s into Apple IIs, because why not? It's fun.
Yeah, why not?
It's very cool stuff. Other big thing I'm working on, and I wanted to call this out because she is such an awesome person. So you all probably know Tech Ambrosia, also known as Tech Hammer.
Yes.
She is an absolutely amazing community member who has designed these wonderful test benches, these little 3D printed test benches for a quick setup and repair of multiple different logic board and parts pieces combinations. So you don't have to build your whole computer inside a case and tear it down again to do work on all those cool things. Well, she has entrusted in me to have a place on the internet. So if you're a person who wants one of these test benches, but you don't have a 3D printer, you can say, hey, Joe, can you print me one of those and send it? And we can send it. So that was a big thing. We had a launch on that yesterday. So I just wanted to say that that's the other big thing that I've been working on. Other than that, it's been holding down the fort in Joe's Computer Museum and just making, as best as I can, things happen for folks. So,
and also Tech Ambrosia is also known as Trina, and vice versa.
Yeah, apparently, there's some sort of confusion about them being the same person.
Yeah, in the same way that Fozzie Bear and Kermit the Frog were twins in The Great Muppet Caper. That might be a dated reference, but it's an apt one.
But it is very apt. Yeah.
Trina, what are you working on, my friend?
Really nothing. That's
that time of year.
I've been working just doing stuff and doing mem test. Yes. If Julia doesn't know this, but pretty much every stream I do, I end up mem testing something. Just because now it's become kind of my stick on my live streams. What have I recently worked on though? I today took out the SSD out of this tough book because the power, I can't find the power supply, and the power supply is like $80 Canadian, and I'm like, plus shipping off eBay, and that's the cheaper option. And I put it in my little HP, which turns into a tablet.
Trina, the upside about that tough book is if you ever need a doorstop, you're set.
Oh, yeah. I'm kind of disappointed, but yeah, I took the SSD out of that, put it in there, and that's kind of what I worked on today. But most of it's just been day-to-day stuff, getting computers ready for sale, working on. If I get a laptop or something in, usually I'll stream working on it. Which reminds me, I had somebody who brought me a Dell laptop, which needs a fan, maybe possibly both replaced. So I got them in, and I texted them this week, and I have not heard back. So I'm going to try to call them tomorrow and be like, the fans are here. You paid for them. Do you want them put in your computer? Come talk to me.
Yeah.
Yes.
But yeah, because most, as I said, most things that if I get a client's laptop in or desktop, I'll stream it. This, I'm not going to bother streaming because it will take me all of 10 minutes, if that, to take the...
Stream it and then swear for the next 30 minutes because we know it's in you.
I have no idea what you're talking about. Hey, I lasted most of the day stream without swearing.
I know you did. You're a good dude.
You were very, very reserved. So
what you working on, Ron?
All right.
Aside from getting frustrated at that board you were working on last night.
Yeah, that was really bad. Let's not talk about that. But let's talk about a fun new thing that I've made with a very risque name. It's the SE Topper. It's a brand new thing. It is over there at jcm-1.com. If you have, if you're like me, and I know I am, you're constantly troubleshooting Macintosh SE, Macintosh SE30 machines. And so what this does, this has a really neat little thing, fully documented there on the back. always a nice thing. But basically, you could plug this in your Macintosh SE motherboard, and what this will do for you is will give you access to a way to connect a modern power supply plus VGA output, so that way that you can diagnose, figure out what's going on with your board. You know what? If you're one of those people, I've heard that there's a fairly famous guy in our hobby who says, "Ron, I don't even have a VGA monitor on my test bench." Kind of makes me wonder about the flexibility of your setup, but that's okay because it also has the ability where you can connect, assuming that I can do this with lights in my eyes, you can connect something like an RGB to HDMI. So that way you've got multiple options, whatever your workflow is, you can plug this into the motherboard, use it to troubleshoot and figure out what's going on. You say, hey, Ron, what if I wanted to connect both VGA and HDMI at the same time? I'm not your dad. You do whatever you want to do, but you can absolutely do that. Why has it got like a huge cut out of the side of it? Well, what if you have an accelerator in your machine? What if you have one of those really great accelerators made by MacFX or something like that? It's specifically, the easement there is specifically to accommodate all of that. So whatever it is you're trying to troubleshoot, whatever you're working on, maybe give it a shot. Thanks.
So, Ron, will this work in a SE FDHD?
Yes. FDHD just means it has a high density floppy drive. So yeah, it'll
Okay,
absolutely
okay.
work.
Cool.
It's an SE with 3 different chips in it.
It will
So-
work
so
in
if
the
we still-
800K. It'll work in the high density, and also work in the SE30. The only thing to keep in mind, this was really designed for the SE, mostly because of the power supply is going to stick out the bottom. On the SE30, the second bank of 4 30-pin RAM sims kind of sits there in the way. But if you are just troubleshooting the machine or something, you
Just
might
need
only
enough
have the
RAM
first
to
bank.
shoot it.
You might only have the first bank. I'm just telling you, I don't know what your time is worth. I ain't got time to wait for a 40-year-old computer to count 128 megs of RAM. There's not enough hours in the day. So if you just put 64 megs of RAM in it and just be like, you know what, this is great. This was a house payment. This was a buying a used car at one point in time. That much RAM. So that's it.
And just if Cubicle Nate is still in the chat,
Mm-hmm.
hint, Cubicle Nate, you might want to get one for your SE.
Yeah, they're fun. I didn't have them when I met Nate at Midwest last year.
Mhm.
But, yep. That's it. Thanks, everyone.
And finally, Julia, do you have any really cool things coming up that you want to hint at to whet people's appetites on something new? Maybe something old. It doesn't matter.
Well, yeah, there is the game that I'm working on, but I can't show it or talk about it. So it's not.
Okay. I'm already out at your website hitting F5. It's
Yeah, I don't even know when we can announce it or anything. But it's like I said, it's supposed to come out sometime this year. So I guess hopefully within the next few months, maybe there'll be an announcement. I'm sorry for being so vague, but yeah, I just finished the last little piece on it today, and yeah, I'm super happy about it. I mentioned teamwork makes the dream work faster. It came together within a few months from start to finish, and so that was a really refreshing palate cleanser from a 12+ year whatever long development cycle, just to get something done in a few months, and you can have it out then that same year really. So yeah. I wish I could share more about it, but I'm very excited about it.
So for everybody who's really curious, do what Ron did and go to our website and just watch it constantly.
Just F5.
Just F5 it.
Cool. Well, that is the end of our show tonight. Let's thank everybody in the chat who stopped by to watch us and our wonderful guest speak about what was going on in our worlds. Let's run around real quick and ask everybody, or say where can everybody find everybody. Julia, we already know, but we're gonna give you an opportunity to plug yourself again.
Sure. I'll take every opportunity to plug myself again. Yeah, you can find me at juliaminamata.com, Julia Minamata on all my social media stuff. Yeah, and the Crimson Diamond, as I mentioned, is on Steam, GOG, itch.io, and Fireflower Games. So you can find me all those places. And I do stream on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on Twitch. _Maple Mystery is my handle. So yeah, hope to see you guys there.
And you have a new follower on Blue Sky.
Yay!
Nice.
Oh my gosh. Good. I was just like looking at your website, your Trina's Tech website. I just put it on my phone so I wouldn't forget.
Perfect.
Ron, where can people find you, sir?
Hey everybody, it's Ron from Ron's Computer Videos. You may know me from here and elsewhere, but you can always see what I'm doing at ronscompvids.com.
It's
I'll
also
have-
spelled incorrectly on that link.
Is it? Oh, I didn't actually go there. I just well,
Just typed it.
listen. Don't go there.
Everybody
It
just
is.
leave it up there.
It is probably a crypto scam site.
Hold
Don't
on,
go
I'm
there.
gonna go there
You go
right
to
now.
ronscompvids.com and you should be able to see what I'm up to.
Trina's gonna go there and she's just gonna drop off the stream, and then we know
It's
it's
all
bad.
modem. It's all modem talk. It's the com.
It's actually it's not even a site. So
yeah,
there you go.
I was gonna say yeah.
Trina, where can people find
Trina,
you?
where can you find me? TrinasTech.com. It has links to all my online presence, including my coffee account, where you can go and if you can afford it, I don't know, buy me a coffee.
Buy Trina coffee because she's very sleepy and we need her to be awake for the streams. So go do it.
Okay,
Joe says so.
you should be proud. I've been going since 11 o'clock on this is my third stream.
It's fine, Trina. We know the coffee shop opened across the street. It's okay.
Yeah. It's 2 doors down actually.
Ooh.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
the funny part is the medium 2 doors down is $5. If I go up like 2-minute walk, it's $2. So
It's worth the walk.
Ooh.
yeah.
You can get 2 coffees at the $2 place and still
Yeah,
save
right.
one in
And
each hand.
and they're both local. So
Oh, that's great.
you know, yeah.
Cool. I guess it's my turn. Hi, everybody. I'm Joe with Joe's Computer Museum. You know me from places like Joe's Computer Museum, where I play a smart person on the internet, but in reality, I'm actually quite stupid. Anyway, you can
And
follow
you also
me
play
at
the
Jason.
same online as
Yeah.
well. So yeah.
Yeah, you know it. You can follow me at jcm-1.com. On there are links to all my social media websites. I post a few posts a week just saying what's on my mind, what's going on in Joe world, or random funny things that I find on the internet. You know, I'm all about the lulz and the memes. You can also, if you have an old computer like an Apple II or a Macintosh or some other machines, IBM Brain, you can go there and find really cool stuff to keep your old computers working. And that is my entire focus, is providing tools for my friends like Ron and Amber and Ian and everybody else to keep everybody's old computers working. Gut Bomb, thank you. Yes, everyone. So check it out. And that's all she wrote. Again, thank you, Julia, for being on our show tonight. I appreciate it. Thank you to our co-hosts for being here. And thank you to everybody who stopped by to watch the show this evening. Now, make sure you hit like, make sure you hit subscribe, write some comments on that. And our next guest in 2 weeks is John Calhoun from Soft Dorothy Software. Yes. Look at that in the chat. John Calhoun created Glypha. That other game that I can never pronounce. Pararena? Is that
Pararena?
Yeah. Thank you. I can't pronounce. It's like me and Trina saying librarian. It's just I can't pronounce that. And of course, everybody's favorite from the classic Mac, Glider. So that's going to be cool. So absolutely. Thank you again,
by
everybody.
the way, I heard from our other host, Javier.
Oh yeah.
He's busy watching movies.
Oh. Sometimes you gotta take time for your family. It's fine. It's all right. I know where to find him.
Yeah.
I know where to find him and break his kneecaps for not being
sniper
here.
scope set up right over here. I know where to find him. It's fine.
For our friends who don't know, Javier is about 4'9" and Ron is about 6'8". So it's funny to see them stand next to each other.
It is, but we are, unlike Trina and Amber, constantly confused for twins.
Anyway,
but it's that movie with Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito. So anyway.
Yeah. I tried to cut you off before you finished the joke, but it's fine. Thanks everybody for stopping by, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye, everybody.